Article 1 of the Constitution that says sovereign power belongs to the people. But again, it can be delegated. And maybe the question to ask here is, to the people we have delegated this sovereign power to the last 10 years, can we say then that they have exercised our power responsibly?
The score is about 80% for me, which is a fairly good score. Okay. This constitution came in the background of a really big clamor to change a lot of things. The constitution between 1963 and 2010 had what a lot of people have called the imperial presidency, the monolithic presidency, and so on, with immense powers vested in the office of the president. The people of Kenya wanted to break it down, because this office was pervading, it was extremely pervasive. It got into the judiciary, it was getting into all sectors of parliament, and so on and so forth. Yes. So 100% perfection in the execution of this constitution, of course not. Kenyans are human, we don't expect that they're going to achieve that. But in my view, this constitution came with a lot of things. We saw parliament in the last few years after the promulgation of the constitution pass almost all the laws that was necessary for the implementation of the constitution. We saw the executive reshape itself, of course, from the hybrid parliamentary executive that we used to have, to a new totally executive system modeled alongside the United States, and so on and so forth. And for the first time, we introduced counties which weren't there in the old constitution. You will notice that upon the promulgation of the new constitution, our national budget has grown from just about over 1 trillion to now 3 trillion. That tells you that there has been immense growth with some of these offices that have been created by the new constitution. So some of these offices are still experiencing teething problems. Some of these institutions are still entangled in problems associated with the history of the politics of this country. But to a very large extent, I can say with confidence that Kenya has moved a great step forward with this new constitution.
80% in terms of the people who are exercising this sovereign power. Kamau, would want to hear your view as regards to the people we have elected into office. You're talking about MCAs, governors, the women reps, all those people, including the president, because we have delegated our power to them. Their performance the last 10 years, do you think they have exercised this sovereign power we have delegated to them responsibly?
Okay, thank you, JJ.
Yes.
What I would say about the constitution and delegation of these functions of constitution, I would want to bring it out from not mostly from the elected leaders, because most of us Kenyans, we look at the elected leaders as the one who are supposed to carry on the constitution or any other mandate that this country has, even from the economy to even other functions like education, to even modalities in the counties as the elected. And you realize that the fraction of the elected leaders are not really who functions or gives function to the government. They are other who are in the background, who are in the administrative point of view, and who leads to the operations. I think on the guys from the president to the MCA who are elected, they're just face and voice of the people, but they are not really mandated to even implement it to the latter, as they say, because when you look at it, there are those who works, when you put a bill in parliament, in the case like in the Ministry of Health, you remember when Mutahi Kagwe said the PPP board is discriminative, and that was done in parliament, and now the Ministry of Health is working on how to make that particular board inclusive to all Kenyans. By that I mean, let's lose our eyes to these elected leaders, even from the president, because he has his office, to the MCA, and we work as Kenyans to make our constitution work. Because like Wakili has said, the sovereignty is given to the people of Kenya. People of Kenya are not the elected leaders. People of Kenya is you.
We have delegated to them.
We actually it's a very bad way of looking at things, that everything we see and hear and do is upon the one.
Let me ask you a supplementary question very quickly, because the people you're talking about, and maybe you're talking about cabinet secretaries or CECs or even regional commissioners are actually appointees of the people we have delegated power to. In this case, the president, the governor, or who. But I wanted a very simple answer in terms of these people we have elected, because we elect them for reasons. Have they lived up to the expectations of these people who delegated power to them?
I would say they've lived up to, Wakili has given them
80%.
I can give them 50 on the knowledge of not even them understanding constitution better than even those who are not elected. Because remember, constitution is 2010. Probably Wakili has a better understanding of the constitution than a member of parliament of Kilifi or wherever. So what I'm saying is, we as Kenyans need to understand ourselves from the basics of what we have, because government is on probably on 10 years or less, or even 5 years, but Kenya as a country, the people of the Republic of Kenya will forever be here. Okay. So it's not pegged to who was elected then as to the exercise of the constitution that we have as Kenyans to posterity.
Obviously, the implementation of this constitution, Jimmy Kagoni, largely dependent on Parliament and some of the other institutions that were given this work. But I'm still on Article 1, because we cannot look at the constitution without thinking about Article 1, this power we delegated. And I want to hear maybe you grading, because there's 80% from Wakili and 50% from Kamau. I don't know how much you would give them.
No, I'd actually have 2 grades for the constitution so far.
Okay.
I would actually maybe, or maybe even grade it in 2 ways. One, I would grade the document itself, and I would also grade the implementation separately. Okay. I think we have a document which 90% is good, but when it comes to the implementation, it approximately 40%. And that takes us back now to the question you're asking about the number 1 act. We the people. You know, JJ, when we were making this constitution, there were a few tenets that were supposed to guide exactly why we needed a new constitution. Among them is because first we wanted to decentralize the power from top and bring it to other places. 2 is because we also wanted to build institutions. 3, because we also wanted to devolve the resources. 4, because we wanted to set some standards of doing business. Okay. So you find there is the Leadership and Integrity Act, you know, that will guide you in exactly what you want to do. And also to defend some few rights. So our Bill of Rights is very rich. You go to Article 10, you find the kind of things that we have written there. You go to Article 202, you find the kind of things that we have written there. Those were some of the standards that we also wanted to set. When it comes even to spending money, when you go to Article 202, you read there and you realize that there is prudence, there is clear management, and all those kind of things. Now, very good on paper. But then when you come down here, you want to know, have we really decentralized power from the top? Have we really been able to build institutions that are strong and independent and are able to operate on their own? 3, have we been able to devolve the are the people down there able to fill the resources as they are supposed to fill them? Now, let me just single out 2 things. Let me single out the institutions. If you check it around, I think Article 248 there, you'll see the independent commissions that have been written there. I think 10 of them, the independent commissions that are there. As we speak, JJ, the commissions in this Kenya, which were actually meant to be independent commissions, I think largely, most of them, they actually operate as agents of the main government.
They are appendages of a particular ministry or something.
Definitely. I mean, you see, like, for instance, the commission of NCIC. You realize that is basically giving all their agents is to the Ministry of Interior. Yes. You know, you check to, like, for instance, the TSC, all their agents is purely to the Ministry of Education. So what we were supposed to achieve by even creating the 10 commissions, you realize that we have not been able to do so. You come to articles like those ones of leadership and integrity, and you see the violation that has been there in this country by actually the people we have delegated that power to. So the constitution as a document could be very great, and I think it's a nice one. I've seen it even be discussed by other parliaments outside Kenya. However, when it comes to implementation, I think we are getting it wrong. And maybe that should actually be the question to change. Is it the document itself, Or is it do we need to check on how we are implementing?
And of course, that's the question we'll ask ourselves. And we'll talk about the hits and misses in this constitution. But a very interesting angle, Wakili Mambaleo, that comes from Jimmy Kagoni, that indeed we gave ourselves independent commissions based on the history of where we had come from and why we needed these independent commissions. But then you realize that at the end of the day, some of them have become appendages. In fact, I remember when we even had the Justice Ministry, the IIEC, the Interim Independent Electoral Commission, appeared actually to report to the Justice Ministry from then.
Probably, even before I answer that question, I need to take just a few moments to explain or put a constitution in context.
Okay.
There are those who have written great works like Thomas Hobbes. Thomas Hobbes is the father of what we call the social contract theory, the basis of which we have constitutions today. That human beings have all these years tried to take themselves away from what we call the state of nature, in which state of nature he describes life to be brutish, nasty, and short, and have a system in which even the weak are protected. In that state of nature, in the jungle, might is equal to right. Now, we give ourselves a constitution as a social contract for purposes of governing our affairs as the commons, as the polity, and so on and so forth. Now, remember that this constitution is extremely young. In fact, it is a toddler, it's an infant. There are constitutions that have existed for many, many years. The UK constitution, constitutions in the civil law world, like in France, in Spain, in Netherlands, and so on. Then we have fairly not old, but not again so new constitutions like the Constitution of the United States, around which we have modeled this constitution. Okay. The Constitution of the United States was promulgated about 200 plus years ago. It took effect from 1776 when the United States became independent. Now, this constitution is only 10 years old. I think Kenyans beat themselves too much for no reason. Okay. Why? Because, believe me, in peacetime, Kenya gave itself a new constitution, which created a complete paradigm shift in the ways we govern our own affairs. We do not expect to have, in 10 years, arrived anywhere close to, for instance, the scenario we have in the United States. Okay? We have done extremely well, considering all we needed to do. The fact that there could be a few problems here and there doesn't mean that we haven't done one. Now, let me tell you. Okay. This constitution created a whole new system of government that is called the county governments. All 47 county governments are in place, even if they have problems. Okay. Right? All the laws that were supposed to give effect to these county governments are actually in place. They need to be tweaked a little, and I'm one of those people who have, for instance, criticized the Senate of the Republic of Kenya immensely, because right from the very beginning, it looks like the National Assembly took over all the roles, including roles that are supposed to be traditionally roles for the Senate, to create the few adjustments here and there that are supposed to give counties the life they require. The counties have been getting over 15% of national budget as is supposed to be. All right? The county governments are running their own business across the country just like they're supposed to be. Now, there's something that a lot of us do not understand. And of course, I understand this because in the background of the lead towards the promulgation of the new constitution, at the top of every person's mind was that we have an imperialist presidency that we need to decentralize. So the question is this, all right? I've heard my friends here talk about independent commissions. That's very good. You have an independent commission of people that are appointed by a panel of 10 or so people. So then what do you do with Article 1 of the Constitution? Because Article 1 of the Constitution only says what is the most important thing in the Constitution. All these powers, everything that you see here, is power that we have given ourselves.
We have donated it.
The only place that Kenyans come together as a people to donate direct power is the President of the Republic of Kenya. Okay. So Kenyans are happy to directly elect a president, but then vest power in an appointed commission that they are calling independent. Let me tell you, that is what we call an oxymoron, a total contradiction in terms. I want to tell you,
Yes.
Those of us who understand how these things work, the independence that is intended in all offices of government, be it the judiciary, the so-called independent commissions, is not absolute independence, because there is no institution that can be absolutely independent in government. Why? Because they need funds, they don't collect them. So what if the central government decided to sit down and refuse to collect taxes?
And shut down the consolidated budget.
Absolutely. So let me tell you this. The framers of the Constitution, having in mind exactly what Kenyans wanted in a constitution, still gave us a presidentialist system with a president who has the powers that you see in those that constitution.
Okay.
They were not wrong until they change it. That is exactly how it's going to work.
I hold that up because let me just come out just a bit to come to Jimmy Kavadi, because he's the one
Yes,
who raised the
because
point
I
of
want-
independence
yes.
of these commissions. And actually, when you think about it, and critically so, why then would you want to assume independence for commissions when you have donated the power to the president? And so the absolute authority in the country should actually be the president.
Let me start somewhere.
Yes.
And I listened to Wakiri very well. And just to use his word, the oxymoron of this constitution and what he's actually trying to talk about
Yes.
is because, and I understand where he's coming from, because this constitution has really created a lot of business for lawyers in this country. In fact, at some point, we should have let the Article 1 to read it with the lawyers.
Yes.
But unfortunately, it was with the people, because the benefit that actually came with that, actually, lawyers flooded all the commissions.
Okay.
It almost became very clear, like they must be the chair, they must be the members, they must be the speakers of the county assembly, the speakers of the national assembly, the chair of this, the chair of that. And
Is
all
that a statement of
So
fact?
I would actually understand. I would actually understand when Wakiri is really defending this constitution. But having said that, I said that one of the tenets of why that led us actually to have this constitution is because we wanted to decentralize power.
Okay.
And we had quite a number of avenues that we used as our approach to decentralize power. Part of it was to ensure that we have very strong institutions like the independent commissions, so that they are not really receiving instructions from somebody who is seated somewhere, because that way Kenyans were complaining that we were actually getting into the imperial system.
Okay.
So for instance, let me just quote this. When you have a commission like, for instance, the one of human rights,
Kenya National Commission on Human Rights.
yes, and you'll be shocked by that to realize that at some point it was functioning. When you have that kind of a commission, it's supposed to bring checks and balances to the government of the day.
Okay.
So when it is not really independent, and it's actually now all their agents is given to the government of the day, I wonder how they are able to do so.
Maybe the question here, so that we dust off with this matter. What exactly, when we talk about independence, what exactly is independence?
Independence, the independence here is very clear, that we want to detach any agents to the main government. Any regions.
But their monies are coming from the
No.
government.
Let me tell you, when we say that the money is coming from the central government, it's not, the central government is just a custodian.
Okay.
That's what people forget, that the central government doesn't have its own money. It's just a custodian from what it has collected from the people of Kenya.
I need to weigh in on this issue.
I think we needed to make it very clear
Okay.
that the central government doesn't really own the money. The central government is just a custodian of the money that it collects from
The
the people of
consolidated
Kenya.
fund.
Yes. So when the mandate lies on them, that doesn't mean that they have the monopoly to actually exploit any other section or any other agency, simply because that they are the one who are doing so. It doesn't work like that.
I need to weigh in. I seriously need to weigh in on this issue
Before you weigh in.
before Kagoni misinforms and misdirects the public on a very simple issue.
All right, very quickly.
It is very easy for someone to sit here and say, the TSC is not independent. Okay? In the constitutional arrangement that we have in this country, the Ministry of Education, under Schedule 4 functions, still retains a function of policy in education.
Yes.
Okay? The education that, the policy that is going to, the Ministry of Education is going to create affects the entire Ministry of Education functions, including functions under TSC. By the way, TSC is only a human resources function. It has nothing else. It doesn't create policy for education. It doesn't even know what is going to be taught in schools. Okay? So this is what I'm going to tell you. Are Kenyan teachers teaching? Has the Minister for Education, as the Cabinet Secretary for Education, for instance, or the President of the Republic of Kenya, denied teachers the opportunity to exercise freedom as they make their syllabuses and so on and teach? The answer is no. You see, let's not be overly emotional about politics just because it's political to be so. In the BBI, you will see people saying that we are not so happy at the way we have taken the function of employing doctors and nurses to counties. And somebody is now suggesting we should get something equivalent to the NHS service in the United Kingdom. That is an independent commission. Why? Because it will do a better job. Now, how these commissions will relate with the cabinet secretaries, with the CAAs, the president, and so on, wherever they are, that's up to them.
Let me give you classic examples, Wakili.
Yes.
You go far. Just about 2 years ago, the Minister for Education, then Amina Mohammed, says the entry points for any teacher for P1 was supposed to be a D+, while TSC had maintained it as a C-. You also have had a situation where the Ministry of Lands has been in constant wars with the National Lands Commission. And the question would be, is it then a misunderstanding of the word independence, or is it a deficiency of understanding the law?
It is a misunderstanding of the term independent. Independent doesn't mean that you must do everything in that sector alone, all right? Because there's definitely a role that the minister is going to be playing in that particular respect. In fact, what we need is interdependence, not independence. Because as between the three arms of government, between parliament, the executive, and the judiciary, we need extremely high level independence. But between commissions, parliament, commissions and the executive, commissions and these other places, what we need is interdependence. Because look, if the commission, if TSC, let's give TSC here because it deals with a lot of people. If we take TSC and we realize, for instance, that the Basic Education Act or the Education Act has a problem, okay? Is the TSC going to sit at Upper Hill and say, we are independent until Parliament deems fit to amend this act? There's nothing we're going to say. We expect the Teacher Service Commission to create a good relationship with Parliament so that when they need Parliament's help with respect to a certain area, Parliament does so. We need the Teacher Service Commission to have a good relationship with the executive so that when they go there and say, honestly, we need more teachers. All of you know that the teacher-student ratio in this country is extremely absurd. Honestly, yes. So when they go there and say, for instance, we need more teachers, the executive would understand. Treasury will be accommodating. What we do not need, okay, TSC to do is for the president to sit in his office at Arambe House or wherever, and then call TSC and tell them, we need a teacher called James Mamboleo to be transferred from this school to another school. Now that would be going beyond independence.
All right. Very quickly, Kamau, because we've been quiet, all these gentlemen were having a banter. But there's something very interesting that Wakili said as regards this constitution being 10 years old. And he appears to suggest we butter ourselves too much. We shouldn't be even thinking about what has worked in this constitution and what has not worked, because it's a living document. Maybe we should see and stay along with it to implement every bit of it. Let me hear your views as regards.
JJ, what I've picked about these two gentlemen,
yes,
maybe I can say him is a lawyer. Yeah. He sounds like an economist. And each one of them is trying to butter where it fits. And I think if I was to pick any Wakili,
you would pick the lawyer side, yeah?
The lawyer side.
Obviously.
This one will eat my money. Now, we are talking about very simple things.
Yes.
It is not about TSC, it's not about Upper Hill, it's not about what? It's about basic understanding of constitution. And I would pick two things. And I would say, we common people who have not done a bit deeper economist and legal matters, please make us understand what this constitution is all about as a people, because I'm talking on majority of many Kenyans, and I don't want every other body to be dependent. Let it be interdependent, because
mutual coexistence.
Yes, because this thing is subjected to human. It's actually on a human subject. This human subject is bound to manipulate and take advantage of every situation. Like you can see, Wakili is putting us to know, next time you are caught, just call me. I'll take you out of this thing. So by that I mean we are
very interesting.
yeah. So we have a very young country here called Kenya, about to turn 60 years, and we've had what Wakili has explained. There are some bases of existence of law when it started 100 years back. So if we exercise this interdependent of bodies which have got a bit of control, by the time we are hitting 100 years, we'll have studied ourselves enough to know that we can give this body independency, and this one we can still tie it up.
Okay.
So on this, on the issue of those who are rolling out the constitution, I would suggest to those who want this constitution changed, can we just do basic laws to basic, like we do basic art to Kenyans, so that they understand the basis of law. Going to do whatever they are doing, they understand what law is. Because if we continue talking when we have a panel of economists and lawyers, the general public won't know what is happening, and they will always go to them, and that will make their life more expensive. Like this guy put that the lawyers took all the commissions and all the assemblies. So what about a guy who can understand a basic matter of a land between a neighbor and whoever, and he can arbitrate in between when they understand the basic law as
it's a fair point you make. But Jimmy Kagoni, and very quickly, because there are things that had timelines, and you'll agree with me, in the constitution. This particular law should have been passed by this time. But there's just one thing, and that is what I want us to dust off before we can even get to the ones that have been actualized. And let's talk about the 2/3 gender. This one has Parliament risking being dissolved because they have passed the timelines for a very, very long time. I don't know where you stand in terms of whether Parliament should be dissolved because of failing to actualize this law by the timelines that were given by the Constitution.
Thank you, JJ. One of my favorite philosophers, somebody called Albert Einstein, said, you can never solve a problem thinking the same way you are thinking when you created that problem.
Okay.
And I find like we have a challenge between the connection, the way we relate with this constitution as a document and the implementation about it. Because, and this is where I start, the document is good on paper. It has very, very nice things there. However, some of these things we really need to check what is actually the challenge in implementing them. And I just want to give an example of the one that you're asking about. Okay. So you ask that we need to see how we can legislate to achieve the 2/3 rule. Now, first of all, it is not even clear, and you look at even that framework, because it's actually that I would want even to understand the Parliament itself and how it even struggles with that, because there's no clear framework. How do you deal with that in a culture like ours, where women leadership is slowly or gradually just getting embraced?
We are patriarchal.
We are quite patriarchal. We are quite patriarchal. I mean, even after, do you know, by the way, JJ, just to surprise you, if the women lep seat was actually open to be for any gender, you'd be shocked. How many women would
you would have men, women reps?
Yes, you'll actually have men, women rep in this country. Okay. So there is a challenge with the constitution, with the implementation of this constitution, and we actually need to check how practical some of these things are. They could sound very nice on document, but then we need also, because a constitution is made in a context of a society and the way we operate and the way we do things. And I would understand when I see that even the judiciary itself was not able even to really clear on that matter. They said we can only achieve this progressively. Because when they check on the practicality of it, they realize that it's not easy on the 2/3. I know it sounds so nice to women when they are told that they are sure that the 2/3 rule need to be achieved and this need to be done and what have you and all that. But then how practical is it what are the measures are we putting, maybe as part of the regulations, to really buff up what the Constitution has said, so that we ensure that we are able to get the 2/3 rule across, not just in Parliament, but everywhere else. How are we able to do so? By the way, it's only that the men have not even checked. If that was reversed, because most of the time when we say that we haven't been able to achieve the 2/3, most of the time we check from the political aspect, the political positions and all that.
Yes.
I would want to surprise you that most of the head teachers in this country are actually women. Most of the head teachers in this country are actually women. Most of the cheerleaders in churches today are actually women. And that is the culture, because you go to a certain sector, you realize that it's more aligned to a particular gender.
Okay.
You go to another sector, you realize that it's more aligned to another gender. I mean, check for instance, and I know that you are staunch Anglican, check the cheerleaders of who are the chairmen in the Anglican church. You realize that most of them are actually ladies, because in that sector you realize that ladies are more aligned.
Okay.
So we need to realize that we are also operating in a context. We need to realize that we have a culture. We need to realize that this is a society, so that we don't really just embrace a document for the purpose of just doing so. But then when it comes to the ground, we cannot even be able to operate. We cannot even be able to do so. I just want to touch something, I think it is Wakiru said, so just to make it clear so that we're able to guide our viewers. You know, maybe the word, and I'm just picking it from Wakiri, maybe the word might not be interdependence, so to speak. Maybe the word should be how to collaborate. For those commissions that are supposed maybe to work together with a certain ministry or government agency, their work maybe should work, how do we collaborate on certain aspects? Because if we don't do so, then we negate the purpose or the intention that actually made that commission to be independent in the first place. For instance, and that's the challenge now we have, because we have been crossing the line. We have actually been crossing the line so often that even the independence of the three arms of government, you cannot even be able to locate it now. The boundary has been fading by and by. I mean, just the other day, and I think we had that discussion, that now you can't really tell what is the independence of Parliament.
We'll get to the independence or the doctrine of separation of powers. But if I heard you saying that the entertaining the thought of dissolving Parliament because of a 2/3 gender bill should actually never be there in the first place. But Wakili would want to hear from you. What has been so difficult? Because there have been several attempts from the last Parliament, even the current Parliament,
Yes.
to formulate this 2/3 gender bill. What has been so difficult? And is it practical then to perhaps petition the Chief Justice or the President to have this Parliament dissolved?
I want to be brutally honest.
Okay.
The reason why the 2/3 gender rule was inserted into this constitution was so as to enable that constitution in 2010 to pass.
Okay.
The framers and the political players at the time understood that they needed to put certain attractive things inside there to attract a huge constituency, especially the constituency of women and the fair gender. Now, having said that, I want to say this, that it's a good thing, all right, to have as many women or as many females in positions of leadership as possible, to have as many people of the fair gender in all forms of positions, including the office of the presidency and so on.
Yes.
But the socio-historical background of this nation is such that this is not going to happen overnight. And I think if it were left to me, this is not one of those things I could have put in the Constitution. I could have done the affirmative action a bit differently. I could have done certain things which in the overall effect give progress to women so that they can be able to competitively run for positions and get into office like men. But this is what I want to tell you. This new Constitution has come with very many things, all right? If you look at, for instance, start at chapter 4. Start even at chapter 1, citizenship. Right now, you are able to enjoy dual citizenship, which never used to be there. When you get into a chapter that is extremely important, chapter 4. Chapter 4 is what used to be the Bill of Rights.
Yes.
Now, the framers of this constitution, understanding that the world has moved a bit differently or a bit far from where it used to be, understood that you cannot guarantee basic things like life or fundamental freedoms like movement and so on and so forth without giving human beings what makes this life meaningful. For instance, education. Free primary education. There is now a free primary education given to all children in Kenya and so on. But I can tell you, in chapter 4, we have introduced another chapter that we call socio-economic and cultural rights. All right? And the Supreme Court has said certain things with respect to some of these rights. One of the biggest rights there is the right to health. All right? Whereas now it is not mandatory for health institutions to give primary health care to anyone, it is recognized that this is one of those areas that the state needs to pursue so that in future, probably the state is able to give everyone free access to medical help. But I want to tell you this. The Supreme Court has interpreted this question, and it has said that some of these things, socio-economic cultural rights, are going to be achieved progressively. Now, I want to take you to the scholars, and before we leave this place, I'm going to give Kagoni a book written by a gentleman who talks a lot about independence of institutions like the judiciary vis-a-vis the other institutions like the executive, a gentleman called Professor A.V. Dicey. Once he's done reading that book, then we can come back here and have this conversation again. On independence. But I want to tell you something, all right? That some of these things cannot be done immediately. And if you read the works of a gentleman called Professor H.L.A. Hart, he talks about norms, laws. Norms are classified into two categories. We have primary norms, like the right to life, the right to freedom of movement, the right to speech. Those are primary rights that you cannot wait until tomorrow to effect, all right? But the right to give every person, every Kenyan a TV in his house so that he can get news, okay, is a secondary right. They're called secondary rights, all right? So we should distinguish them. And so in my view, even the question of parity between the sexes in the fact of access to opportunities, in their progression in politics, in the social space, in the economic space, is a secondary right. And that one is definitely going to be a question that will be achieved progressively. If we can move faster to get there, the better. But we are not going to kill ourselves that we have not gone there. So this is what I'm going to do when that question comes up. And I'm going to look at Chief Justice Maraga and tell him, this is what somebody called nonsense upon stilts. Do not even waste time sending that question to the president, because he's never going to dissolve parliament. Not on that issue.
All right, I want us to take a breather. When we come back, Kamau, I'll give you a moment so you can respond, and also talk about the 2/3 gender bill. But you also spoke about the Bill of Rights, and we need to ask ourselves, it has been called the most progressive constitution, the Bill of Rights most progressive. But then, can we say then we are enjoying those rights exclusively, like they have been granted by the Constitution? Let's take a breather. We'll be back in a moment. Don't go too far.
interdependent with the other clan and to the other tribes, we existed so well as Africans, right? So, and I would not want to put that this constitution we are talking about of 10 years and the one that was for the legical Lancaster, I would not say that it was superior than our traditional way of living. Okay. One of the things that I take note, and I don't know how to put it in a way that people would understand, is the issue of the house tax. And the white man realized that a man who has 3, 4, 5 wives was more richer than the one who has one. And there is no way a day that he would go and be a laborer in his plantation. Yes. So he decided, I'm going to take tax from your household depending on the ones you have. And the men were subjected into marrying one wife. It is not written that whatever, but it has been brought in like the gender rule of the female side has been discriminated for long. But in fact, they're the one who has been, in our African setup, they're the one who has been controlling what a man has. In fact, for a lady to get married, it was like, I will show you what I have, then you decide whether to come to my place and control what I have so that you can expand your family. But we are left into a way of thinking that when someone got into an office, that is now when we are fulfilling our agenda. You're trying to say
we have already achieved the 2/3 gender rule.
In fact, that was in our African way of living, but now it is lost in our way of jealously want to guard something very small called money. Because for a man, the man who has wealth of a chunk of land like that stretched to 20 kilometers, there is no way one lady could have managed that particular piece of land. So it was prudent for him to have a wife here, 10 kilometers another one, and 10 kilometers another. Okay. So on this third
gender rule.
Yes, I would go with what Wakili is saying. Wakili says it is secondary. It's not primary. And let's not forget that our boy and we say boy child and girl child has been left out, and actually is the one who used to hold on what, because if you get married and your father has given you a piece of land, you cannot entirely donate it to someone, so you're left without. So on that 2/3 gender rule, I would say, in fact, it is not as something that we should be talking of now. Having said that, I'm a father of girls.
Yes.
I will educate my girls to the farthest that God will enable me in their effort to get there, so that they can get into Wakili's sons, and they can go where what you're talking about. And let me finish. By that I mean, I'm more traditionalist and a Christian to take off what I have than to jump into something that I don't understand that is coming from the foreign.
But you have one wife.
And I have one wife. And Kagoni said, let's look at what we have even as we go changing the constitution from where we are coming from to get into, but not to jump into Western way. And I don't know why people like picking on the modern. They say modernization. Going into other people's way of life does not mean that you're becoming modern. It is even better because I've seen of late that divorce, marriages, Wakili would bear witness. There are so many divorce cases in our society. We need also to ask ourselves, are we more on ourselves as
previous administrations? You're talking about the Wagala massacre. You think about the shifter wars and stuff like that, and then police brutality. When we were talking about the Bill of Rights and Kenyans looking at it as progressive, it was based on that fact. Have we made progress so far when it comes to, reversing some of this brutality that Kenyans used to face, that right now you can say my right has been upheld by government?
Yes, I think we have made quite a lot of progress there. Okay. It's good to appreciate that. And by the way, the Bill of Rights, it's so rich that at some point I think I saw the Congress in America was actually discussing our Bill of Rights. And we might not have achieved everything there, but by the virtue that there is even awareness, that there are rights, and even for them to be entrenched in the Constitution, up to there is already a progress that we have made. And we have quite a number of rights that have been made there, rights to education, right to life, and they have actually been alleged to one way or the other. But let me say this, because it's important to understand where it's because we realized that it was possible to violate some of these rights and actually to take them for granted, because we never knew when a society is becoming more civilized and more modern and more educated. It is at that level that now they are able to start appreciating all the values that come with the status that they are achieving every day. And by the virtue that we have the kind of Bill of Rights that we have, so to speak, you realize that today people don't just make requests in regard to certain services. They actually demand them by citing the Bill of Rights, which is quite critical. When you are mentioning some of these freedoms and the rights that have actually been entrenched in the Constitution, you realize that now people are not just in the masses of who is governing. It's actually a matter of demanding that we need this to be fulfilled. So when we are talking of a basic need, a basic commodity, something like water, it is no longer a request. It is no longer a request. And I want to actually just support something I think Wakiri said, that as it is now, it's a matter of realizing that life can never be what it is if it is not really supported by some of these Bill of Rights that are there. So you find commoners, and Wajiko, like we popularly refer to her, you find Wajiko is able to know exactly, even in the structure of governance, what exactly am I entitled to, and how can I even get it without really begging who is supposed to be to do that for me. I mean, think of something, and I just want to cite this freedom which has actually been violated before, and it was quite something. The freedom of expression. The freedom of expression. People like Goge wa Thiong'o and other writers like Maina wa Kenyatte and many others that we might cite, these are people who had to go and look for asylum somewhere else because of that freedom itself. You know, I know the modern generation might not really understand what it used to be like when that freedom was not there and was not entrenched in the Constitution. That we have people who had to flee away from this country because of just expressing their own opinion. However, we have seen recently some few elements, not many of them, but some few elements of people who would actually want to cripple that, and especially to the political class. It's important to understand how did we get to have that freedom being entrenched there, because there are people like Koigwa Amwere. I mean, simply because of that freedom alone, they had to seek safe haven somewhere else, like in Norway, for more than 10 years, because they cannot even express their opinion and all that. So the Bill of Rights is quite progressive. And by the virtue that it's there, even to have the awareness that it is there and being entrenched, to me, it's progressive.
Okay. Wakili, on paper, just the other day we had mass evictions. During COVID and it's raining, mass evictions in Kariobangi, in Ruai. We have seen incidents of police brutality, major in a sense. And then we have seen an attempt to spy on us, that right to privacy. As we talk about the Bill of Rights, then, what are the misses in this very progressive law as we talk about?
On the question of Bill of Rights, this is extremely important to all of us, and it's extremely important to me. And I want to say this. In fact, if there's a place where government has not done extremely well in certain aspects, it's with respect to the Bill of Rights. Overall, there is enjoyment of rights, basic rights and fundamental freedoms. But when you go deep down, you might find that a lot of people are suffering in spite of the existence of this extremely progressive Bill of Rights. But let me give you a small historical background. By 1961, the British were already ready to give independence to Kenya. Our forefathers, of course, took a trip to Lancaster and they had a discussion there. At that time, because each person was pulling to their side, there were many interests that people were looking at. The white people then, the white settlers in Kenya, had an interest in retaining their land, all right? So if you look at the Independence Constitution, you'll see that it had very strong legislation on property rights, okay? Now, on the other hand, a highly brutalized African community in Kenya was really looking towards freedom, what we call in the Constitution fundamental freedoms. The right to speech. That's why if you go back, for instance, Section 79 of the old Constitution used to say that every Kenyan has a right to freedom of speech, to perceive ideas, to pass on ideas without interference, and so on and so forth. So each person was looking at different things. The Asian community at the time was looking for something. And you must always remember that the constitution as it is a pull and push about the interests facing that community at that time.
Okay.
So even this constitution that we have is also informed by socio-economic and political considerations of that nature, only that there has been a long distance that this country has moved since 1963 to the present. But I'll still tell you, even this progressive Bill of Rights that we have is still not a perfect Bill of Rights, because a perfect Bill of Rights would be the kind of Bill of Rights that you see, for instance, in the Universal Declaration of Bill of Rights of 1948.
Okay.
The African and People's Rights Convention on People's People's and Political Rights. And you know, a lot of people don't know that we even have a court on African human and people's rights sitting right here in Arusha. All right. So this is what I want to tell you, that the Bill of Rights doesn't mean much. Even if 90% of it has been implemented, it doesn't mean much for that person who was shot by the police, or for the family of that person who was shot by the police while every other person went home, okay? The Bill of Rights can be 99% good, but it doesn't mean anything for this one kid who goes to hospital and they cannot get attended to. It doesn't mean anything for this person who is arrested and in 20 days has not been brought to court, okay? So the Bill of Rights is one thing on which Kenyans must continually put the government in check, because one violation means taking one life. We cannot afford to take one life just because the Bill of Rights failed in that respect for that one person.
Okay.
But having said that, I want to say that, you know, there are many things that have been done, especially on police brutality. We now have an independent institution called IPOA. You might not see the work it's doing, but it's disciplining a lot of officers. If you go to the ground, there are a lot of officers who get disciplined for infractions related to the Bill of Rights. Now, these days, for instance, I can tell you, just the other day, Justice Odunga, sitting in Machakos, gave a ruling in which he found that the DCI has been misusing his powers by directly taking people to court without processing them through the office of the DPP, and so on and so forth. So I have litigated many petitions in the courts. The other day, I had a client who was rushed to court on trumped-up charges. I took that matter to Milimani, and James Makau, just sitting in Milimani, dismissed that thing immediately. So, in as far as the institutions to protect the Bill of Rights are concerned, we have done a pretty good job. The courts are doing their job. The police are failing every time. But I can tell you, it is still a long distance we have traveled. If you drove on these roads 10 years ago and you drive now, you can see the difference. You can see the difference. Right then, to drive on these roads was itself a criminal offense. Once you had a car on the road, that was without more a criminal offense, and every police officer had a right to arrest you and charge you for whatever. That doesn't, of course, happen now, all right? That doesn't mean that the police don't disturb people here and there. So we have made big strides on the Bill of Rights. But on the Bill of Rights, Kenyans must continue being extremely vigilant, because every time one mistake is done, or an error of judgment is committed, as a result of which we lose a life, that life is too costly for us. It's just the same thing. Like in criminal process, look at Article 48 through to Article 50, protecting the rights of accused persons and so on. What we say in criminal prosecution is, it is much more better for 10 criminals to walk scot-free than to allow one innocent person to go to jail or to suffer criminal punishment, because the pain society will feel from this one person being punished who is innocent is much less than 10 criminals walking scot-free. We are hoping one of these fine days the law will catch up with them. So my take on the Bill of Rights is this is one of those places where Kenyans cannot afford to go to sleep. On the other things we can make noise about because it's politics, but on this one, every person, even my president, whoever, Chief Justice, on this one, we must tell him that every time, because of mistakes of government, a kid is swept away by floods, all right? That one we cannot
That's a
agree.
violation.
That's a violation.
On the Bill of Rights.
Yes.
Kamau, of course, last week we were here trying to discuss whether the country is going back to the old days and the days of darkness. But when you think about the Bill of Rights and probably with the trends we've been seeing, even a trend like a return to political detentions and arrests that are completely unwarranted, do you think the government is doing enough to protect the rights that are given to us by the Constitution, including right to assembly, because I've seen people being tear-gassed while demonstrating?
JJ, on human rights, basic human rights, this can only be basic human rights. Because what Kagon is trying to explain about those exiled heroes and those who are arrested, and Wakili is trying to do a case on what prosecution is and what, in fact, most of the exercise that Wakili does is on human rights. So that if I'm taken in, he will talk of my human rights so that I can be released on bail, so that I can go doing the other things I was doing as I wait for my case to go forward. And maybe I was doing something which was not good. Basically, human beings are selfish creatures. And by that I mean, you give me this much right, I'm going to violate Wakili's right. So among the things that Wakili has touched, I coil myself so much into being a traditionalist. Okay. There has been an issue in this constitution, which people, also as a Christian, it has not been addressed. And this issue is of the is it sexuality, Wakili? On the issue of gayism and lesbianism, which actually borders into human rights. To me, this is violation of human basic right of Africans, because Africans we were not into contest or even discussing sexuality.
For the right
anyone who is advocating for these gazing what do we call these things, whatever you call them, it is actually not it is not in the Christian, it is not in traditionalist, it is just something that you brought into us, and people will hide.
But the Constitution claims you are a secular state.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying. First, we have to know who we are as Africans, so that as we make constitution, we understand from where our forefathers left us. Okay, as we move forward, and as you come to join us in a way, we have to understand that you're telling us to do these things. And I remember the president was taken to task by an interviewer like you and was asked about this thing. He said, we as an African and as Kenya, as a nation, we are not there yet. Those things you're trying
Those are not our priority.
It is not our priority. Okay. So in this basic human rights, that's what I'm saying, as a person has come out. And even the Bible takes that our hearts are evil. So a human being is an evil person, very selfish person. So if you give that human those elaborated, and Wakili can bear witness that this constitution has some so elaborated human rights issues, which has been put into that is making that I can kill today. And because I have human right and I'm protected, you cannot take me anywhere. And when I'm taken to the court of law, I should be given bailout, right? When you look at, not even debating on constitution, as human beings living in this country, how can we make this Kenya better? Not considering that the constitution protects me as a person. How can we, because now we have the paper you're calling constitution, have a basic education on how to behave as human beings before we go to court and give this guy a piece of work that can pay him? So on the progressive arrest of these people, you're saying, are we progressing backward? We are actually getting back to less understanding and knowledge on who we are as human beings. Because our forefathers, they didn't go to school, but they understood how to live with your neighbor. Okay. But where we are, having gone to school, most of us, and with so many papers, we actually cannot even understand, respect, and show consideration to the next person. Okay. So we can do whatever we want to do because we are and we have basic rights. That is not even protective of my neighbor. So for me, we need to look back and see how and where we've come as Africans as we move forward.
Africans may. And there's a valid point he raises, because I say I'm running out of time, and we'll just cap it on this Bill of Rights. But Jimmy Kagoni, and I would also want to hear Wakili.
Yeah.
Where exactly do your rights begin and where do they stop? And I think Kama was trying to raise that point, because how then do you have people who have stolen billions of money from perhaps, let's say, KEMSA, or through this COVID-19?
The Auditor General said that there is no money that has name.
I'm giving a hypothetical.
Okay, pick another
example.
one. So that you don't hide
Somebody
up
who
one.
steals from Aroro Kimorelo. Does that make you happy?
Oh yeah, that one is
Okay. Somebody who steals money that was supposed to construct dams. You're talking about people who've stolen donations from Jakma. And then we go to court, and Wakili tells us this suspect has a right to bail when we know the amount of people who've suffered because of his theft. Damage.
Thank you, JJ. I listened to Kamau before I come to you. Before I come to your question. I'm listening to Kamau, and he's making us listen to stories like African traditional stories kind of a thing and all that. And I wanted to assist him, because there is the perspective of what the African and the traditional ways could stand for. And there is the constitution that we are auditing,
which
now,
is not superior to our way of living.
Which we are not really mirroring that with the African way of life or the Asian way of life.
Africa should always be superior to whatever we are getting from through the entry.
This is a civilized society.
However,
there is no civilization in writing.
Thank you.
However, having said that, and I really hope that we are going to have some time to discuss about representation.
Yes.
Because I
of course
feel
not in today's show.
Where I was
we'll do it on Friday.
I was really hoping that we would be able to discuss about representation, because basically, just to say this in passing, this constitution is also a bit expensive. It's good to admit that. Okay. This constitution is a bit expensive, and we actually need to check on representation and to see, are we even getting value for money for the offices that we have created through this constitution? But coming back to what you're asking about, because many of us have actually been agitated, when you know very well that somebody has corrupted or somebody has actually stolen or squandered public funds. But because of the Bill of Rights, he's protected in one way or the other, and we see a lot of delay in getting justice for those kind of cases. But like they say, and Wakiri is here, like they say, you know, the law cuts both sides. The law cuts both sides. At one side, when it is protecting, then on the other side, it's also hurting. I mean, we have seen cases, I think this is the period during this constitution that we have seen criminals that we knew very well, who took advantage of this Bill of Rights to walk scot-free from court because of one reason or the other. I mean, people who we felt that should not even be eligible for any bill, and we see them just getting bills and just walking out. In fact, I can't remember whether it is this DPP or the previous one, was actually complaining that his work has become...
It's the current one.
Is the current one. Yeah. Was saying that his work has become extremely difficult, because everybody is just rushing to the Bill of Rights, and you just quote one that you feel that is fitting you at that moment, and then you walk away. And then you get to a point of, how then do we really fight the kind of vices that we have in our society when you have a Bill of Rights that appears to be more skewed to certain direction of actually protecting guys who are here to violate what is going on? Let me give you an example that is very current. So we have guys who have gone to KEMSA, bought things from KEMSA, sold back to KEMSA, I don't know, exchange to whoever and all that. These are billions.
Kamau says that is not true.
Yes, these are, well, I totally understand. Kamau, I told you the other day that it's quite difficult to actually defend government at this period. I really pity him, and I feel where he is coming from, because, I mean, the government has actually been implicated right here and there and all
Clearly.
that. But anyway, we allow him to have a meal from there. But the point I'm trying to make is this. You have KEMSA as a body and as an agency, I mean, that has actually been given the work to ensure that at least we are safe when it comes to issues to do with medical supplies and those kind of things. But then somebody comes and take that kind of money, We have seen the doctors and other medical practitioners, people who are supposed to benefit with the PPEs and protective gears and those kind of things and all dying because of that. And somebody wants us to reason and see, you just see somebody going to court and they are able to get that. For instance, by the way, do you know that most of the people who have actually been suspended from government because of one or two things, corrupt issues and all that, most of them, no charge or nothing has actually taken place.
Yeah, including those Aror and Kimorel.
Including even Alo and Kimorel that might make Kamau very happy. Including Alo and Kimorel, nothing has actually happened. Do you know, by the way, the 6 ministers that were suspended by the President Kenyatta in his first term, only one case has actually gone to completion.
Michael Kamau?
Yes. The rest
still pending. Others have been dismissed. Yeah.
So we need to check the bureaucracies that have also been brought by the Bill of Rights, and the benefits that have we might have accrued from the Constitution, the Bill of Rights. They might have also created bureaucracies when it comes to dispensing justice in this country. That has become very, very difficult, and maybe we need to check.
Okay, let me put in the dock here very quickly. We have an MP seen on CCTV camera shooting a DJ. 3 weeks later, they are out on bail. We've seen people stealing. Money is traced by forensic evidence to their accounts. 1 week later, once they're presented in court, they are out on bail. It's a right in the Constitution. And why I'm putting in the door is that Kenyans feel these guys are thugs, criminals defended by lawyers.
That's exactly why they should flock to BBI in big numbers and ask for change of the Constitution. I listen to Kagoni speaking, and sometimes I think you cannot allow someone to speak from two sides of his mouth.
True,
On the one side, he is saying this Constitution is so good we need to implement to the letter. And then on the other side, he's telling us this Constitution is so criminal. It is allowing criminals to walk scot-free. You got to choose these battles very carefully, my friend Kagoni. And on this one, even if Kamau has not retained me to protect his Sufria of Ugali from Kemsa, I must come out in his support. Yes. Because this is what the Constitution says.
What does it say?
Judges and magistrates do not adjudicate cases on their own law.
Yes, it's
the Constitution is the supreme law of the land. And actually in Article 1, it says that it is the supreme law of the land, and any other act of parliament or any other law made pursuant to this Constitution, to the extent that it shall be inconsistent with that Constitution, shall be null and void. The Constitution is the social contract that Kenyans have given to themselves to govern their public affairs. And this Constitution says in Article 48 that upon arrest through to Article 50, this person shall be taken to court within 24 hours, and that magistrates and judges shall give them bail unless it is an offense for which bail is not available. And the only offense in this country now for which bail is not available is treason. I have practiced in jurisdictions like Tanzania where most of the offenses are not bailable. Okay? So if Kenyans want to go back there, they can go back there. But you know the reason why this progressive Constitution has given offenders bail? It is because we must start on the basic principle that every person is innocent until they have been proved guilty by a court of law, by law established. If that has not happened, it doesn't matter what you have done. And you know, I don't want people to become pretentious like Agoni here. because you see, even the Bible itself, the supreme law of God,
appears to be having a wild moment here.
The supreme law of God allows forgiveness. It doesn't even allow punishment. In fact, just by admitting that you have been saved by Jesus Christ today, for Christians, amen, you are going to heaven. You have been forgiven.
Yes.
Now, in this country today, people have suffered because of the misapplication of the Constitution with respect to rights of accused persons. And when you look at that Constitution telling you that when you do this, then this happens. There's a criminal procedure code which has been made pursuant to that constitution. There's Article 24 of the constitution which talks about limitation of people's rights. When can you be held in custody? And so on and so forth. In fact, I'm extremely happy because today, police officers are no longer using the criminal process as a reason to blackmail and intimidate people, because they know that immediately they arrest you, the hours start counting. And if they do not bring you to court within 24 hours, I will make an application to the High Court, which is called habeas corpus. And the courts will say, habeas corpus means release the body, okay? Yes. And you will be taken out. So what we should do is this. All officers created under this constitution, including the office of the Inspector General of Police and all officers there under, including the Director of Criminal Investigations, should do their job marvelously well. That's why we have given them that responsibility. Okay. So that by the time they claim that PS so and so has stolen 20 billion, they have foolproof evidence with which they can get a conviction in court. And then give a solid file to the office of the DPP, who will have no option but to see that there is an offense that has come out of these facts, and then take that matter to court. If they don't do that, nothing is ever going to happen. You don't expect magistrates and judges to give you convictions just because the public is baying for James Mamboleo's blood. It's not going to happen like that. And so when this is done, when every office is doing its job, believe me, those who need to be jailed will be jailed. Those who need to go scot-free will go scot-free. But we cannot allow a system in which monkeys are allowed to determine a matter of the forest. We cannot allow a system in which you determine a case of the boys without listening to the girls. This is the system that Kagoni is suggesting. And the first person is going to hit is this Kagoni himself. And the first person he will run to is me. So I don't want to tell him that I told you so.
I will give you a right of reply because Kamau is the one who appears to enjoy this moment, particularly the hits that are coming your way. But very quickly, Kamau would want to hear your view because James Mamboleo is telling us this is the situation as it is. Let's deal with it as it were. But do you think we need to get to a point where if we talk about the amendment of this constitution, where we have to think the gravity of the crime that you commit, then there's a crime that should be denied bail?
On that, I feel protected. As per now.
Clearly.
With those few words that Wakili has put, I can walk and I know that if anything happens to me, that I have someone who can talk through it and I can go maybe innocently or taken away.
You can now apply apply for corona tenders.
Actually, I'm not going to.
No, what he needs to do is put me on a retainer.
Exactly. Now I know I have a Wakili who will talk on me. But on the issue of Kagoni, I know if I put Kagoni in whatever I have, I'm going to lose economically. Because it's not going to take me forward. It actually take me backward. Back to your point.
Let's not make it the subject.
Yes,
okay.
yes. Because now I didn't know that
now
I would get
protected,
there. I feel protected on my right side.
Yes.
Now on the issue of
bailable crimes.
Bailable crimes. As to my basic understanding of Kenyan Constitution, I would say it this way: there is the DCI, there is the DPP, and there is the Court of Law. I think, because I've not gotten myself into bailable situations, but now I know I can because Wakil is here, the DPP and the DCI need to harmonize their operations. By that I mean, whatever is happening in the office of DCI, and because we are talking about constitution and going to it on how to harmonize and get into constitutional matters, the DCI and DPP should be in the same office, because we cannot have DCI running the whole day, the whole night, trying to investigate a crime of theft of KEMSA, because you want me to mention on that, and when it gets on the office of DPP, it's that file is not sufficient. Let's remember that even them who are working in the DCI office are people like us. Some of them don't even sleep. Right?
But the DPP is the one who has constitutional power to determine whether.
Exactly. Now we need to chart a way forward through the change of constitution. That if you are working on the DCI office and the DPP office, they should work hand in hand. Not when I work at night, then I give you the file during the day, and you say I didn't work, and I was actually using a torch to know or to establish whether there was a crime of money stolen in certain organization, which your office has the interest on the other side, so that we can have a harmonized and actually reduce on what this friend of mine, the economist Kagoni, is saying on the reduce the cost of doing the business in a constitutional way.
All right.
Yes.
I don't know whether the right of reply is in the Bill of Rights, because Kamau appears to say you've been very economical with the truth.
You see, JJ,
Yes.
what we are basically doing here
Yes.
is that we are auditing the Constitution.
Yes.
Now again to the constitutional
Auditing the
and
Constitution.
economical matters.
Wait a minute.
And I need to help Kamau and Wakiri here, because there is something that the accountant called audit. Audit doesn't really show just one side, it shows both sides. And it shows that there are liabilities and there are assets that are associated with whatever premises that we are discussing about. So this constitution has had a very good part, but of course we must also be very candid enough to actually say where it has not been able to serve us very well. And in one particular area, and is actually in the Bill of Rights.
Yes.
So on one side we have the Bill of Rights, and I've said that they are very progressive because by the virtue that they are even entrenched in the Constitution, and there is even awareness up to that far. You got to appreciate that at least we are somewhere. Some of those rights used to be violated so easily and so casually that some people have actually become victims because of those particular rights. But having said so, at the same time, I also want to really be very candid and very courageous to actually say that we have seen institutions and individuals who have also taken advantage to see how they can poke holes through those Bill of Rights. For instance, we had a case here of Akasha Brothers.
Yes.
An evidence was taken to court. Similar evidence was taken to another court in America.
And they were prosecuted.
And they were prosecuted. The likes of James Mwaboreo in Kenya, they did their very best to ensure that criminals like Akasha Brothers are out. We have never been able to convict, yet the crime was actually, that crime took place in Kenya.
Even the Smith and Usman scandal.
I need a-
IBC scandal.
Exactly, it took place in Kenya. and you see, because that actually both the judiciary and the practitioners of the judiciary, like Wakiri and others, have really taken, if there is one section we actually need to check on how they have taken,
Hurry him up so that I can respond.
let me tell you, it is actually on the bill. It's actually on the Bill of Rights.
Yes.
It's actually on the Bill of Rights because they are quick always to rush to see how they can defend a criminal. And I'm citing that example of the Akasha Brothers, a crime that took place in Kenyan soil, not even in America. Okay? Immediately in a span of just a short while, we see that the American court has already convicted those guys and they're supposed to serve a sentence. In Kenya, we have people who are just taking us around saying this has not happened, they need to be bailed, there is right for this, there is right for the other, and all that. And I know most of the Kenyans, I know I might not be very popular with most of the Kenyan lawyers in this particular one, because basically I'm totally touching now on their meal. But just to say this, if we are not careful, if we are not careful on how either we tighten or we make it very clear about our Bill of Rights, it will remain a gray area that will be used and violated by mainly the court practitioners, the officers of the court, including the judges, because we have seen even judges who have been given out those kind of bails until people had to complain. I mean, without even mentioning names, we know of a judge in this Republic of Kenya who would dish out, and all the politicians actually wanted to go to that court. There was a particular reason why they just wanted to go to that particular court. I mean, I don't want to say that James Mwaboreo might have been part of the conspiracy, but if we are not careful,
He needs to finish.
if we are not careful, the Bill of Rights might become a gray area that might take advantage of the benefits that
Can you make it less
Ju-
than 1 minute? Because
yeah,
time
just
is gone.
less than 1 minute.
Yes.
An area doesn't become grey because Kagoni says it is grey.
Yes.
It is grey if it is actually grey. First and foremost, I sympathize with Kagoni because with his amount of education, I didn't think you were going to become an economist for the truth on the justice. Let's put it this way, my friend, that the Bill of Rights is a Bill of Rights that cuts a very delicate balance between rights and responsibilities. For every right, there is a corresponding obligation on the part of every citizen. Okay? When Kagoni comes to my class, I teach in university, I teach law students. When he comes to my class, I'll teach him that there is a policy that addresses questions relating to criminal prosecution. First and foremost, Kamau, the investigator and the DPP cannot sit in the same office because constitutionally, as he investigates, it's the DPP that must make a decision whether what you're presenting is actually correct or not.
Then you
Because
teach them both of them in the same class.
because if you are one and the same person, will not know where to stop.
All right.
But ultimately, it is the responsibility of the prosecution, using the evidence that they have been given by the police, by the investigators, ESCC or whatever, to prove that case beyond reasonable doubt. Okay? So the DCI must get not just evidence, but evidence that has probative value. Okay? Evidence that can prove something. And then the prosecutor must retain serious prosecutors who must come to court and stand against James Mamboleo and show the court that in actual fact, this person committed the offense. What we have is a common law system. It is called an adversarial system. One side is the prosecutor and the other side is the defense. There is no other way. The other way you are suggesting is going to be kangaroo, which is anarchy. The prosecutor...
Not to the jury and not the jury maybe?
The jury is also beyond reasonable doubt.
Okay.
You must convince them.
All right.
All right.
So ultimately, now they have started heckling.
Very quickly.
So this is
before we lose
so I'm winding up.
10 seconds.
I'm winding up by saying, because we were auditing the Constitution.
Yes.
I'm winding up by saying, because I think this is my last remark.
Yes.
I'm winding by saying, this Constitution is extremely progressive. It has given us extremely nice things, but it's still a work in progress. 10 years is a very short period of time within which we could be able to test drive the Constitution fully. However, there are a few things that we think, even with these 10 years, we are still able to relook at. And for those few things, I enjoy myself with every Kenyan of goodwill who wants us to come together and change those things so that this country can be better. However, as I finish, I also want to tell Kenyans, don't beat yourself too much. God has given you a beautiful country, good people, and we are still a lot better than a lot of people. We are not where we ought to be. We can move faster, but don't kill ourselves. Let's not kill ourselves if we are not moving faster. What we need to do is get more fuel. We don't need to burn
Fuel
houses.
means money to you.
We don't need to burn houses and cars. All we need to do is get more fuel in the tank so that we can go further.
Which means money.
Very quickly.
On this one, I'll direct it to Kagoni.
Okay.
Kagoni, in our African ways, there has always been a way that when you report a case to the elders of the clan, there's a way when you come in, they will tell you, just either take a glass of water or just have a cup of tea. We sleep over that matter. We'll discuss it tomorrow. It didn't mean that it was delayed. It is a way of letting things settle. I know I'm talking to you and some of your generation. Don't beat up so much on wanting to see the justice. You might injure your leg going forward. Number two, in the Bible, there was a certain man, and Kagoni is a believer, and he reads the Bible, who made a mistake one day. And because we are men in a Jewish way and in an African way, there is a way we do our own things. He got into a den of men and he did something and he injured someone's goat. And because he didn't have something to pay, the old man used to walk with a rod, like a stick. And they talked with the lady and agreed, when you get something to pay me, yes, when you get something to pay me, just come for your Lord.
Yeah.
What he didn't know that lady conceived. And when it was the day to beat up that lady because of the mistake she did unmarried, and she was asked, who is the owner of this? And what the lady did, she brought out the road. And she asked, who is the owner of this? And that man, I think, if I'm
that
not
in the
wrong,
Quran?
that
No, it's actually
it is in the Bible.
Okay.
That the man was, who was the man? Jacob.
No, it's not Jacob, but it's the Bible.
Yes, it is the Bible. So what am I saying? Kagoni, don't beat up yourself so much, as Wakili is saying. Just let the thing settle. Let's build a country. Let's compare our new ways
I mean, guys.
and what our forefathers did, so that we can move forward. Thank you very much.
Show. What are you saying? Wakil has invited you to his school.
Kamau is inviting you to African
And
ways.
you need to go to the African tradition of the school.
It's quite unfortunate.
You'll have to pay fees.
It's quite unfortunate for all this time that we have been sitting here. Kamau didn't realize that we were not auditing the African ways. We were auditing the constitution.
No, I'm actually,
But having-
It's okay, very quickly.
I'm actually inviting our African way of living into this.
But
new constitution.
having said that,
Yes.
I mean, we must always remember that justice delayed is justice denied.
Okay.
And I want to say something before I join the school that I've been invited by
Wakili.
my colleague here, the lawyer.
Yeah.
Let me say this. One of the reasons why Africa has lagged behind even this far is to entertain the comfort zone for far too long. I mean, we need to realize that we are competing with the world. We are not competing.
But they are competing also with
we are
us.
not competing. We are not competing. We are not competing.
They're competing with what? With
They
the
are
road?
competing with us.
You know, we are not competing. We are not competing with Tanzania. We are not just competing with the tribes and the clans that are here. We are competing with the world. There are some things that we cannot really entertain. What I'm trying to say.
That's why we now sit
That's
in
why
the
I'm
Security
saying-
Council of the United Nations.
And I know
Yes,
people
we have
like
a slot.
and I know people like my good friend here, the lawyer. He would want us to remain in this kind of laxity and lackadaisical kind of manner just to handle things and all that, so that they take the
Laka.
benefit and all that. But the point is, we must realize that we are in 21st century and we need to catch up.
Okay.
I mean, some of these mistakes that we are talking about, so to speak, some of these more mistakes, these are things that we can fix like now. How do you explain, surely, and this is my last submission, how do you really explain Akacha brother, similar evidence that is adduced to American court, and the same evidence is actually adduced here
Now I must
in
respond.
Kenyan court, in Kenyan court, surely,
if we
how
make
do you really explain that? How do you really explain that, surely,
okay.
that those guys are still scot-free? It's because of the school that Maumbre is actually
Tell him
inviting
to
me
come to my class,
to
I
just
show
try
you.
entertain
He will
and,
tell
and
him
all that.
when it comes to class.
And if we allow
Basically.
and if we allow that kind of school to actually enlarge, you can be sure that Africa.
Kagoni, you have made the point. Come to my class, I show you why.
When you go to
Yeah,
the class,
yeah.
maybe you get to explain each
Yeah,
other and understand each other.
but get
you know
fees.
what? Time is up. Thank you very much for watching Taifa Dialogues. And thank you very much to the technical team and the digital team for making this happen. Let's take... it's actually, we're going. We'll see you on Friday. We'll talk about representation and we'll also talk about devolution,
Minister.
the doctrine of separation of powers. So we are going home lackadaisically, you say? Let's go.
When economists learn small words of English,